Special edition of the Sit Down with Malik Wright, presented by First Star Logistics. Truly, this was an unplanned edition of the Sit Down with Malik Wright, presented by First Star Logistics. We just got some crazy breaking news out of the UFC that I felt compelled that I had to go live tonight. I had to talk about it and discuss. Charles Oliveira is officially out of the main event fight with Islam Makhachev, and that shakes up the entire lightweight division. My partner, as always, Daniel Alameda, is a huge Charles Oliveira supporter, fan, and I'll be honest with you, I think I almost saw a tear go down his eye when it was announced that he was no longer going to be headlining this UFC upcoming card. But no, Daniel, I'm going to kick this over to you, man.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of UFC fans that can all agree with us that are pretty disappointed with the showings that this will talk to us, man. What are your thoughts?
So if you guys are watching, we're going to get into what's next. What does each fighter get out of this? First off, man, the cut is real. That's the first thing. Go out, look on the social media. The cut is real. It's a bad cut. Man, this sucks. But at the end of the day, it shakes things up in a good way. And we're going to talk about that, right? Volkanovski's in 10 days notice. First off, one hell of a fighter for taking a fight on 10 days notice.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is what he wanted. He wants to be active and he gets his shot. So Volkanovski versus Islam. I see this going obviously one of two ways, but let me talk about what's next for Charles Oliveira. I hate to be, the bearer of bad news, but I don't know if the man gets a title shot. I don't know if his next fight is a title shot. I don't know what his next fight is going to be. Is it going to be a Mateus Gamrot? Is it going to be, I don't think it'll be a Gaethje or Poirier once again. I don't think the UFC will want to make those. So I look at a Mateus Gamrot, but let me present a name, and I want you to touch on this in a little bit, but UFC is all about timing, Malik, and I want you to get into it in a little bit, but Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor had a fight lined up with Michael Chandler, but this shakes things up because you look at how this fight, it's Volkanovski, Islam. The winner of that in about 3 to 4 months is going to fight. Obviously, the news, Conor McGregor is going to be entering, and you saw the testing. Does this open up a pathway for Conor McGregor to potentially fight Charles Oliveira? Because in my opinion, if I'm Conor, he's a big draw, right? He could get a Charles fight, and then if he wins that, he gets the belt. Or hell, if I'm Volkanovski, let's say Volkanovski goes to Abu Dhabi, beats Islam Makhachev, and wants to move up. Let's say he wants to move away from featherweight, wants to defend it at lightweight. Who's to say he doesn't call out Conor McGregor, and in Conor McGregor versus Volkanovski is the next fight? So there's so many different possibilities in my eyes. If I'm looking at Charles Oliveira, I'm looking at a Conor fight. I'm saying, hey, I'm going to call out Conor. That's who I want next. Or it's the winner of Volkanovski versus Islam. But I'm going to be honest. I'm talking to Charles. I don't think you're in the driver's seat to call them out. It's going to be, what does Islam want to do? And it's going to be, what does Volkanovski want to do? So Charles Oliveira, obviously this is a terrible thing and it's not what he wanted. This definitely sets him back because there is no guarantee he gets that next title shot. So, man, I'm excited to see this. For UFC fans, I'm sure everybody's going to be rooting for Volkanovski because then that shakes things up to where if he beats Islam, does Islam get an immediate rematch for a trilogy? Potentially. That's something that, could be potential, but it depends on how the fight gets finished. But man, I just feel for Charles because this was his shot. This was his shot at redemption. So, man, I'm just excited. This shakes things up for a lot of people. Looking at, once again, Gamrot, he thought he was the backup fighter, which sucks for him because it showed right away. Dana called Volkanovski, not Gamrot. So Gamrot's got some work to do. But, man, I'm just excited for this because at the end of the day, let's go down to featherweight real quick. If Volkanovski wins the belt, beats Islam in 2 weeks, then there's a chance Volkanovski doesn't fight Ilia down low, and there's a potential Ilia fighting for the belt right away against a guy, like you said, Max Holloway. So that's my thoughts. My biggest takeaway is I think this opens something up for Conor McGregor.
I don't want to be the same old, and I'm not trying to ridicule you for what you said.
Yeah.
What you said makes a lot of sense, but I just don't want to. I don't want to beat a dead horse when it comes to Conor McGregor. And, Conor McGregor makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Let's talk about what this means for the lightweight division.
Yeah.
We're completely glossing over the fact that Alexander Volkanovski has a real shot at dethroning Islam Makhachev.
Yes.
Okay? Islam won that fight last time, but he didn't. He won the match. He didn't win the fight, in my opinion. I think that Alexander Volkanovski coming in on short notice, albeit a couple months ago, he had hurt hand surgery. So It's going to be very interesting to see how he looks, but we know Volk has been clamoring for this bout, and I think it's just destiny. These two were destined to fight again. I don't even care about Conor McGregor. I don't care about his return. I care about what's next for the lightweight division. I care about what's next for Charles Oliveira. I care about what's next just moving forward. Let's talk about what's next in terms of Charles Oliveira.
Yeah.
Charles Oliveira is out of the lightweight title picture. The fact it's just irresponsible from a team standpoint. I understand accidents happen, but to be sparring, right, to the point where you have a gash so deep that it causes you to pull out of your fight. I understand Shoot the Box is one of the biggest, fight gyms inside of the UFC, and they breed absolute killers. But it's just absolutely irresponsible for this guy to be fighting as hard as I'm guessing he was in order to get a deep gash like this. So he had to pull out of his rematch against Islam Makhachev. That's step one right there. Completely, just disappointed to see that. Step two, I think that when we look at Charles Oliveira, it was always going to be a tough fight for him to be able to beat a guy like Islam Makhachev. And think about what he had to do. He had to impressively stop Beneil Dariush in order to get this shot. There is nobody right now that you could say, you know what? If Charles Oliveira stops them, Charles Oliveira gets a title shot right now. That was one of the biggest names he could have potentially stopped to get that. So I think when you look at it, I think Charles falls to the back of the line. And you brought up Mateusz Gamrot. Mateusz Gamrot is a guy that, guess what? This is a guy that, he basically won his last fight on an injury. Um, he basically won his fight on an injury, and it just shows where where he stands in the UFC's
Yep.
eyes and stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, man, um, I look at it and I think it just puts Charles in the back of the line. I think Mateusz Gamrot makes sense for Charles Oliveira. I think Arman Sarukian makes sense for a guy like Charles Oliveira, but also timing has to match up for this fight to take place. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
where I see it. Timing has to match up for this fight to take place. And I just think when I look at it, I think this could be a situation in which the lightweight division might pass him by a little bit.
Okay.
And you think about Volkanovski and what Volkanovski presents to Islam Makhachev, especially on short notice, 11 days, 10 days notice, depending on which way you look at it. It's a guy that took you to deep waters last time, or you took him to deep water last time. But as the fight went on, the stronger a guy like Alexander Volkanovski got. And so I think that Alexander is probably feels comfortable with his wrestling defense against a guy like Islam Makhachev. He feels good about his ability to stand with a guy like Islam Makhachev. He got dropped. I just think that this is such a massive, massive mistake, I would say, for Charles Oliveira's career, man. I really don't know how else to put it, man. I think that Charles Oliveira moving forward has a real a big road ahead.
Yeah.
And let's even talk about it a little bit more, man. We talk about the featherweight division. What do you do there? Because guess what? A guy like Ilia Topuria doesn't want to sit around and wait. So for me, I think you take Ilia Topuria. I think you take Max Holloway, who's coming off of a vicious knockout over the Korean Zombie that put him into retirement. And I think you do Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria for the interim featherweight championship. I think that's what you do. I think that makes a lot of sense. And depending on the outcome of Volk versus Volk versus Islam, that'll determine what Volk does. Does Volk want to be a double champion and defend his belt down at featherweight and then come up and defend his belt at lightweight if he was to beat a guy like Islam? I don't know if he would want to do that, but it opens up a real path for other featherweights in the division, because like if you're a featherweight in the UFC, you are pushing for Volkanovski to beat Islam Makhachev this upcoming fight. You're pushing for it because you want to see the featherweight division continue to move on and continue to not be stagnant.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point. And the UFC's got not a good thing on their hands, but they do, right? Because they can wait, right? They can
Mhm.
wait till this fight, so they don't even have to make that fight yet. They can say, okay, let's wait, let's watch. If Volkanovski wins, then they can say, all right, let's scrap the Holloway Ilia fight. Let's make Volk versus Ilia if he wants that down there. If Volk doesn't want that, then perfect. You got the Max versus Ilia. Let's look at the lightweight, and I want to say one thing. This is a very good thing for Islam Makhachev. And the reason why I say that is this is great for his legacy. This is great for his legacy because when you look at, the difference of what does beating Charles Oliveira do for you, it doesn't really do a lot for Islam. He dominated him. So and this was a fight where Islam just wants to put a stamp on this, but him beating Volk does way more for his legacy, in my opinion,
You
than
think
him.
it does?
I think it does because of the question where we can look, let's say Islam's career is done right now. How I'm looking at it is he dominated Charles, but I'm saying, okay, well, Volk beat him. So for his legacy, what does dominating Charles Oliveira, a guy that we can say, albeit at his peak right now, he was a journeyman,
But
versus Volkanovski, if he, let's say he goes out and finishes and puts a stamp on him. This is a
sure,
yeah.
but my one issue is I have and Masty, we've got a yes, we've seen the picture of the injury, Masty, and we've also, you said I don't think that they do an interim fight because Volk is very active. They did an interim fight for Volk before when he was active before. They did an interim fight,
Yair
versus Yair versus Josh Emmett. So they will do a interim fight if it makes sense. So I think that's null and void. But keeping the conversation rolling, I think that it does not do a lot because let's talk more about Islam's legacy.
Yep.
This is the same issue that I have with Muhammad Ali's legacy when it comes to fighting. These guys fight similar people over and over again. And, especially when there's a deep crop of other fighters you could be fighting. Now, I look at it and I say, outside of Charles, Islam has yet to defend his belt against a true lightweight. And he didn't even defend his belt against Charles. He fought Charles to win the belt. And then he fought Volkanovski coming up in weight. And then now he's fighting Volkanovski again, albeit he's supposed to fight Charles, who he already beat. And now he's fighting Volk, who he already beat. He has yet to fight guys in his actual weight class, right? He's yet to fight guys at his actual weight class that are in the top 5. He has not fought a Gaethje. He has not fought a Poirier. He has not fought a Sarukian as of recent. He has not fought a Mateusz Gamrot. And so it calls into question your legacy at some point, especially when Islam already has retirement on the tip of his tongue and has already been calling out the welterweight champion, Leon Edwards. There was a point in time in UFC and mixed martial arts that when you called out the double champion or the champion in another weight class, you had to have runs under you. You had to have a body of work that was so dominant that when you called for that next fight, nobody could deny you. Islam Makhachev does not have that. And the fact of the matter is, after he wins this fight, he's going to call for the fight with Leon Edwards or Colby Covington, because Colby Covington already said he wants to give Islam the next title shot. The fact of the matter is, I think that this hurts Islam's legacy, man. If I'm Islam, I would have put my foot down and I would have said, hey, give me a Mateusz Gamrot. Give me something else, because Volk, let's be honest, Volk already has a killer lining up for him.
Yeah.
Volk already has a killer lined up for him in Ilia Topuria, who I think is going to give him a lot more than he can handle than what people think. The fact of the matter is, man, I don't think this does much for him. It calls into a question a lot. Our people already feel a certain way because he skipped a whole bunch of people on his road to the lightweight division. He fought Bobby Green?
Yeah.
He like these are the people. I understand he beat Dan Hooker. That was impressive, but that was also on short notice. So for me, when I look at it, man, if I'm Islam Makhachev and if I'm his team, and maybe they don't care about it, maybe they don't care about legacy and fighting and beating some of the top guys in your actual weight class, but what is his body of work?
Yeah.
What is his body of work? Especially because after this, he's going to call for a welterweight title shot. What is his body of work to deserve that? Volk has damn near cleaned out the entire featherweight division except for Ilia Topuria. What is his body of work, man?
Yeah, and that's what I just want to say. I think we're agreeing more than we're disagreeing. The reason why I say that is I think this pushes his plan forward a little bit more, because if the fight were to play out, Charles, he was going to have to fight Alex at some point again. So what I'm saying is, I don't think after this, I don't think we'll ever see Islam versus Charles again, because
we don't need to see it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why a little bit we were kind of not confused, but the UFC was put in a tough spot because Charles had the huge knockout versus Beneil.
I think it's just so disrespectful. I'm
yeah.
trying to cut you off.
No, yeah.
Beneil won how many fights? He still hasn't gotten a title shot.
Yeah.
You reward Beneil by saying, we're going to feed you to the wolves and we're going to give you Charles Oliveira, a hungry Charles Oliveira who's coming off of losing his lightweight championship. Beneil won how many fights? Tony won how many fights? These guys won how many fights in order to get a chance to even sniff an opportunity at a title shot? And this guy, Islam Makhachev, waltzed right in. And I guess I like Islam. I thought he was a little bit overrated when people were comparing him to Habib and doing all this kind of stuff like that. But this guy waltzed right in, became the lightweight champion, against Charles Oliveira. And mind you, dominated Charles Oliveira. And everybody knew it was a bad matchup. It's the reason why he was a minus 450 favorite against the champion at the time. The fact of the matter is, I look at it, I don't know, I take a real issue with the way that I understand Volk is deserving. If Volk says, "Hey, I want to deserve," I just think when we start talking about the legacy aspect of it and what it actually means and what it does, like you don't get credit for beating the same guys you beat already. You stopped the champion in Charles Oliveira, who's champion. You stopped him in the second round. You say you're going to submit him. You submitted him. Now you're about to fight Volk again, a guy who's a featherweight champion coming in on 3 weeks, coming in on 11 days notice. Mind you, he's a couple of months removed from hand surgery. I don't know, man.
Yeah, and that's where I think the original fight between him and Charles was it was a question because if that was a pathway, he fights Charles and he fights Volk, and then he maybe moves up to welterweight, fights there, and then he's done. Now it's if I'm looking at his pathway, he beats Volk. If he obviously he beats Volk, right? Then it's either I think you got to fight a Gaethje or you move up. In my opinion, if I'm the UFC, I make that Gaethje fight. But at the same time, I mean, he could call out like the Colby fight, and that we could see Islam be very. It could be short lived.
And this is what I'm trying to talk about. People, people are making excuses. I agree with you, brother. You're making sense. You said, unfortunately, Dariush is boring and it's hard to sell. 100% agree with you. But then Masty Flips, who we always tend to disagree with each other, but Dariush was on an 8-fight win streak, but he had never beat any real contender. So Charles' fight was for the title shot. So I think that's fair. No, wrong. And the reason why it's not is because Islam didn't beat any real contender, but you gave him a shot at a championship, and look what happened. So you give guys a shot at championship, especially when they have a run, and you see what could happen from it. We don't know. We don't know. Just because we can't. Well, who's determining who's quote unquote a real contender? Because by that metric, Islam never beat a real contender. Like that. That's just my thought process. He hasn't done anything to like, I don't know. I'm not taking issue with the fact that he's fighting Volk. I'm taking issue with what's going to happen after he fights.
Yep.
Volk. And we know how this is going to happen. Islam wants to be double champion. That is something that he has made very clear. He wants to be double champion. He's throwing his hat, his name in the hat for the welterweight division. And I don't know, man. I just think that like it's almost like what Conor did when Conor was featherweight champion. Never really defended the belt at featherweight. Not really. He didn't defend the belt at featherweight and went up to lightweight. It's like, there's a whole bunch of guys that's me. I think that's holding a division hostage at times, man. And there's a whole crop of killers who deserve an opportunity to prove themselves. And Quinn, I appreciate you, my man. Thank you for tuning in, brother.
So let's play a little. No, you're Dana White right now. Let's say,
sure.
I'm going to give you these three names. Right? Obviously, you got Gaethje. Okay, Gaethje and Gamrot. Who do you put first? Right? Gaethje, Gamrot, Saryukin, because Poirier just lost to Gaethje. The next guy for the title shot is Gaethje and Gamrot. Who should get the shot? Let's say it's between those two. Who would you put first?
Man, I think it's tough, man, because Gaethje's gotten the title shot, but but you don't like that's not a negative. It's not a knock on him, right? He's fought Habib for the title. He fought Charles for the title. You know what I mean? Like he consistently gets title shots. It feels like. I just think that Gaethje's run he's been on has been a little bit more impressive than Mateusz Gamrot. Mateusz Gamrot fought Jalen Turner to a tough fight. He beat Rafael Vaziev, but that was more so due to a leg injury. But I thought he was losing that fight when it first started, personally.
Yeah.
Gaethje
cleaned.
I think it's tough to give a guy like Mateusz Gamrot a title shot. He needs to prove himself a little bit more. But I do think Justin Gaethje is deserving of a title shot for sure.
1000%. That's how I look at it. I say, respectfully, the rest of these names like a Poirier, I think Gaethje's first in line. If I'm the UFC and what I want to see for Islam's legacy, I would love to see him beat Volk. I would love to see him then fight Gaethje and then move up. That's what I would want to see. And then, because I don't want to see a Charles fight. I'm a Charles fan. I don't want to see that fight again. He has to have another fight before you can't face Islam off a loss before Gaethje. So I want to see Islam fight Gaethje. And I would like to see him move up before he finishes his career. So that's what I would like to see out of Islam, but that's not even taking into account. What if he loses?
There's a new crop of young guys in the UFC, man. Mateusz Gamrot, Vaziev when he gets back healthy, but it doesn't feel like Sarukian. It doesn't feel like Islam's going to stay. It doesn't feel like he's going to stay. It doesn't feel like he's going to stay around a long time. You know what I mean? And Tree with leaves. Let's read his comment. Let's Tree. because that's extremely like ridiculous. The UFC doesn't make enough money for sponsoring corporations. This dying industry. The stream is a moot point. No, it's not. It's something that we're passionate about, something we're going to talk about. And guess what? It is an important topic, even though it might not be an important topic to you, brother. So let's keep the conversation rolling. Daniel, what else are your thoughts?
Yeah, I want to talk about, let's say Volk wins, right? Let's talk about this. If Volk wins, what's next for Islam? Does he get an immediate rematch?
If Volk wins, what's next? I mean,
Does
Islam is definitely
Islam?
going to try to get an immediate rematch. Islam is definitely going to try to get an immediate rematch. But do I think that he, do I think that do I listen? Volk can have to do it for a third time.
Yeah.
They'll have to do it for a third
Yeah.
time if he wins. They'll have to.
Yeah, but then that's the hard part, because now you're holding up the division.
Now you're holding up the division. Exactly.
And this is, respectfully, that's a fight where, however this plays out, let's say it goes to a decision. Obviously, it's gonna be a fun fight, but this is a third fight where it's not doing anything for your division. It's not. So the way I'm looking at this, man, I'm just excited to see, because once again, Chandler hasn't fought in God knows how long. He's waiting for Conor McGregor.
Right.
Dariush is gonna have to fight. Maybe it's like a Dariush versus Gamrot, but then that's screwing over Gamrot a little bit, because he.
I mean, no, Gamrot. We've already saw Darius.
Oh yeah,
Gamrot, and he got clean.
He got clean.
Yeah. I don't think Gamrot is deserving yet of a championship fight yet, but I think that maybe a Gaethje versus Gamrot makes sense.
Yeah.
While this thing sorts itself out, I think Gaethje versus Gamrot makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Honestly,
I would agree. But then if you're Gaethje, you're kind of pissed because you're going down. You're going down. So. Man, I'm just excited.
Well, let's, to be fair, if you're Gaethje and you're pissed, I mean, let's be real, brother. You've gotten title shots at the interim level where you lost to Poirier. You've gotten fights against Khabib. You gotten fights against Charles Oliveira for the belt. You've come up short. You know what I mean? You came up short in each of your title opportunities. The only opportunity you got and that you actually kind of broke through is when you beat Tony Ferguson, become interim champion. So I think that other than that, I don't think that you should be upset about too many other things.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right, because at the end of the day, he is not a journeyman. But yeah, I'm just looking at this man, and Gamrot. I'm on the same page. I'm not super impressed with Gamrot. Dariush.
Let's be real. A Gamrot would do more, and I understand what you're saying, Masty. Gamrot would do. Gaethje would be doing more for Gamrot's career than he would be doing for his own career by fighting him.
Yes.
You think that's fair?
Yes.
A fair statement? I think that's fair.
Yes. 1,000%.
But what about Arman Sarukian?
Yeah.
Where does Arman Sarukian land in all this? That's my question. Because I think Arman Sarukian versus Islam is a very technical fight and a tough fight at that. But again, it's it's just a weird thing. I feel for Charles, man, because I know Charles was really looking forward to breaking through and fighting Islam again and having a shot at the championship. But it's not falling his way for whatever reason. That we're not going to see that fight because of the eye injury, the eyebrow injury. I just think that this is a missed opportunity a little bit too. I don't know. It just feels like the run that we knew Charles to go on, this might have took the air out of that balloon a little bit. Because if you're Dana White and Sean Shelby and the UFC matchmakers, you don't just put Charles back in there with whoever the winner is just because he was slated to win.
Yeah, if Volkanovski, let's say Volk wins, Volk versus Charles isn't happening. I mean, it's going to be a third fight. It most likely is going to be a third fight. And that's why I'm trying to figure out, okay, is there a way where it's not a third fight? No, Islam's smart. He understands the business, and he's got to be, on his team. If he loses, he is going to call for that third fight. So
he would have to. I mean, he would be deserved. I guess he would be right. The only reason he would have to justify is because he beat him the first time.
Yeah, but I don't want to see that, man. Nope, I don't want to see that fight again.
You don't want to see it, but guess what? It was just it's tough, man. It's just tough. Yeah. It's a tough situation for the UFC. It's tough for everybody all around. I'm really curious, man, just how it's going to break. Let's talk about the real question, though.
Yep.
Do you think that Alexander Volkanovski has a real shot?
I think he does. And this is where the 10 days notice might help him out a little bit, because we understand that he's been training. The dude is not stopping his training. And you look at Islam, who is preparing for another fight. This gives all Alex has been thinking about, respectfully, in my opinion, is either Ilia or Islam?
No,
It
I feel like he's been looking past Ilia. I think he's been really
folks at
looking
Islam.
at Islam.
So this helps him out,
Because he
right?
was talking about doing this fight at UFC 300. He said if we both win our fights, then we fight at UFC 300. And I'm telling you right now,
Yeah.
I want to be the guy to just claim it right now. I really believe, guys, that Ilia Topuria is going to beat Alexander Volkanovski when they fight. If they fight, I really do. And in the meantime, or if while Ilia is waiting, depending on what happens, we don't know. Volk could re-break his hand. We hope he doesn't. He could re-break his hand. He could win the lightweight bout. Anything could happen with this fight with Islam. But you can't have Ilia just sitting on the sideline. He has to be able to do something, right? So for me, I think the last time we saw Ilia Topuria was against Josh? Was it against Josh Emmett?
Yep. Clean Josh Emmett.
It was against Josh Emmett, right?
Clean him.
So for me, I just think that give Max Ilia Topuria. If Ilia is ready, if Ilia is truly ready to fight for the UFC belt, give him Max Holloway or give him Yair. Yeah. But I'd give him Max Holloway. Give him Max Holloway. If Max beats him, that fight that UFC Dana White has been saying we don't want to do, Max versus Volk again, it'll be very, very hard to deny Max if he beats Ilia.
Exactly. Exactly.
It'll be very hard.
And that's where I think it's a beautiful plan. You wait to see, okay, if Volk wins, then it makes it a lot easier to do that, because then you can say, all right, Max versus Ilia, and Volk has the decision. Okay, he moves up, he beats Islam, he can fight at lightweight once while he waits, because Volk doesn't. I mean, I don't know him, but he would rather fight Ilia for his legacy than Max. So Volk either loses and comes back down for Ilia, or he wins, watches Max versus Ilia, and then waits to see the winner there. So Ilia Topuria, if I have to make a guess, I think the man's going to fight at some point in he'll fight in the next 4 months.
Yeah, man, that's interesting. So I want to get to some of these questions in here, man. Our guy Masty, man, is really doing a good job keeping this chat rolling, man.
We appreciate you.
Appreciate you, brother. He says, I don't know if you guys heard Dana White press conference, but he was pissed because Charles got it fixed before they told the UFC instead of using UFC plastic surgery. Yeah, I did hear about that. He said, I wonder, he was asking who do we think would step in basically for Paulo Costa if that fight gets called off. Who do we think would step in at middleweight for Paulo Costa if that fight gets called off?
So yeah, you're looking at, you got the champion, Leon and Colby, they're fighting. You got Kamza.
Well, this will be at middleweight, so we're looking at middleweight fighters.
Oh wow, yeah.
We're looking at middleweight fighters.
Man, Duplessis?
No, I don't think Duplessis wouldn't fight Israel when he was dealing with his little thing. So I think Duplessis thinks that he
too good.
Well, Masty, before we went live, I wasn't sure that the fight got called off. He said he said it was a potential for it to get called off, and it was still up in the air. But if it did get called off, they were calling replacements already.
Wow.
So that's
he said Vettori declined the fight.
Yeah, he said Vettori. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but all I can say is if that fight does officially get called off, because as of right now, from what I last saw, it was not officially called off. But who do we think could step in and fight at middleweight for that? Jared Cannonier makes sense, right? Jared Cannonier makes sense.
So process of elimination, no Israel, right? I just don't think Izzy
wouldn't do it.
Exactly.
No, he wouldn't do it. But if he was an absolute savage, then I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. But I'm trying to think who else could potentially step in and it makes sense. Maybe you get a guy like you can't do the Holland did it already. Pereira's not going to do it. Pereira's got the fight with Jerry coming up. I don't know who I think that you start
Whitaker.
Looking at Whitaker could, but he's not stepping on short notice. Right. I feel like Robert Whitaker's a guy where he needs in a full camp and all this kind of stuff. Man,
all these names. I mean, like
Chris Curtis.
Curtis. I don't know if he wants that though.
Chris Curtis stepping in on short notice. It's tough because like if you're fighting Khamzat Chimaev, you're basically you know what you're in for. You know what you're in for. I'm just being honest. Like it does. There's a lot of things that would have made sense. You know who would have made a lot of sense?
Who?
I think Khamzat fought him on the regional scenes, but he's fighting. Isn't he fighting?
I think he's fighting on this card.
He's fighting on the card. Alex Grozov or whatever.
Yep.
I think that fight would make a lot of sense. I think there are some fights that could could make sense. But I just think that you got to pay guys very, very handsomely, and it's got to make sense. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm looking at this and the names, it's slim, man. I mean, you got Whitaker, Jared Cannier's one a guy that always seems down for something. So he's a name that I would pencil in right now, potentially.
Hear me out.
Yeah.
Hear me out for a second. I know he wouldn't do it, but why call up Kamaru Usman? Kamaru Usman was begging the UFC to fight Khamzat Chimaev. I know probably Kamaru doesn't probably want to fight at middleweight, so it would have to be a compromise somewhere. I don't know.
I think Kamaru, that's the one where, because I mean, he's in a limbo. He doesn't have a fight. The dude is in a place where even, let's say, the winner of Leon versus Colby, they're not gonna really care to fight Kamaru again. I mean, Leon, that makes no sense. Colby, they already fought before. So I think Kamaru makes sense. I mean, if he wants to move up, he wants to challenge himself. That's something that I would respect the hell out of Kamaru Usman if he, and obviously he probably doesn't give a damn about my respect, but if he goes up in weight, fights Khamzat Chimaev, or if they meet down somewhere, I like that. I like Kamaru.
I think you have to be realistic. Call Brendan Allen. See what if he might do it.
Too young prospect.
You know, they wouldn't do it because this guy says he wants to take a break from fighting, and they don't want to stop the hype train. But Bo Nickel, he was saying he could beat him a couple times, but I think Ikram Aliskerov makes a lot of sense. I really do. Let's talk about that for a second. I think Ikram makes a lot of sense because I think it's a guy that, you know, they have history together. I think he can make sense. And where's that Chris Matinho when you need him? Where's that Chris Matinho when you need him, man?
Ikram is fighting.
He is.
Yeah, that's the part that sucks.
No, he's fighting on the card right.
Nasruddin,
but we've seen them say screw it. They'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen the UFC do it. So, you know, I don't know.
Man, yeah, I'm just looking at these names. Jared Cannonier seems like the one that kind of makes the most sense. Is there a world where, I mean, they got to keep him on the card, right? You have
to try and pull out all the stops to keep him on the card, man.
That's the hard part. There's just not a lot of crazy names like a Paul Craig.
I don't think Paul Craig would do that. I don't know. It's good. Listen, I don't want to beat a dead horse. We've been live for 30 something minutes already. Roman Dolidze has told the UFC he wants to fight on short notice. I think that fight would make sense. I think Roman Dolidze would get absolutely destroyed, but Roman Dolidze is an absolute savage. He's a tank. So I don't know. Let us know. What are your thoughts?
No, real quick. I was going to say Jared Cannonier had a quote from about a month ago. He said, "Give me Dricus or Adesanya." He didn't want to even think about Khamzat Chimaev. So
Masty Flip said Nasruddin Imavov pulled out of the fight, so Aliskerov doesn't have an opponent.
He pulled out of the fight?
Yeah.
If you pulled out of the fight, then that's right there.
Yeah.
Ikram Alexander.
Yeah. I didn't even know Nasruddin pulled out of the fight. Wait, was he scheduled to fight someone different? As a question, we're kind of doing this in real time, so I'm trying to figure out if he's supposed to fight somebody different.
Yeah,
because I feel like he was still. Yeah, no, Nasruddin is supposed to fight Ikram. I just don't know if Nasruddin is. I'm looking it up right now, seeing if he's actually off the card.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, just looking at this, Khamzat, the way he
forced out with visa issues, 100%.
When was that?
Like 3 days ago.
3 days ago?
3 days ago.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
So that's the fight.
Yeah.
That's the fight. Looking at the rest of the names respectfully, there's not something else.
And that's a very interesting fight.
How did I not hear about that?
I don't think anybody. I mean, it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks before basically a week and a half before the fight. So, yeah.
I saw somebody. I don't know if this is real or not. Somebody said Ikram remains on the card. He takes on Warley Alves.
Warley Alves.
So I don't know if
that's a boring. I mean,
I'd rather
if the UFC wants to get interesting, they could do that. I mean, because Ikram's going to beat Warley.
Yeah, and they've done this before. Yeah. We saw this at the last Charles fight, I believe. Or no, it was the Nate Diaz Khamzat. We saw.
Yeah, that was a complete crap show. They did Tony versus Nate, Khamzat versus Kevin Holland.
I mean, this is a crap show too. I mean, you got two fighters pull out, Paulo Costa and Nasruddin. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can easily scrap the Warley Alves fight for that if you want to, but
I want to see that.
I would love to see that personally. But listen, we've been live for 34 minutes. We'll definitely have more to talk about in the coming days. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live. I know this was sort of like an impromptu live video where we're breaking this all down and talking about and discussing it, giving our live reactions. I like to think I'm still I like to think I'm still looking forward to this upcoming card for a lot of reasons. I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons. But for me, I just man, I was actually looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing uh Charles Oliveira take on Islam Makhachev again, but we're not seeing that. So any final thoughts, Daniel, before we head
Yeah,
out
I
here?
mean, like I said, this is just it's the beautiful thing about the fight game though, because it's gonna be a beautiful thing when we see the card, everybody's switched up, but man, you got to feel for Charles. I saw you just post something on social media. So this speeds up a lot of things. This opens up opportunities for people that weren't expecting it. So I'm excited for this. Islam, now's your chance. This is your chance to really cement your legacy. Go out, beat Volkanovski, speed up your process. And I just hope Charles gets I hope Charles doesn't get a Gamrot or something. I
Yeah.
hope,
Well,
but
my
we'll see.
thought process is this does not speed up your legacy. This is not do much too much, but go out and do what you're supposed to do. If you're this dominant lightweight champion that everybody thinks you are, you go out there and you beat a featherweight stepping in on 11 days notice who's coming off of hand surgery. That's my thought process. Not going to make too much more of it. Anyway, appreciate you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. And Quinn, hit me up, my man. I appreciate you, brother, man. You got to watch some more UFC. Maybe you got to come over Saturday and watch the fights with us. Who knows, man? You're not too far away. So, but until then, man, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll